Picture this. You are lying on an operating table. Your heart has stopped twice. Doctors are fighting to save your life while bringing 3 tiny babies into the world 8 weeks too early. And 10 steps away, in the hospital hallway, your husband is signing divorce papers. Not crying, not praying, not asking if you will survive. He is checking his phone, adjusting his tie, texting his mistress the words, quote, "This is the cleanest exit possible," end quote. You wake up alone, no husband, no insurance,
We're here,
no
Grace.
money,
Now we fight
and a team
back.
of strangers telling you that you cannot hold your own babies because your husband, the man who abandoned you while you were dying, has filed paperwork claiming you are mentally unstable. This is the true story of Grace Mitchell, a woman who lost everything in a single night: her marriage, her money, her reputation, her children. But here is what her husband did not know. He never asked about her mother's maiden name. He never checked her family history. He never discovered that the woman he married, the woman he thought was powerless, was the secret heir to a $2.3 billion fortune. And the moment he saw that name on his children's hospital bracelets, his entire world began to collapse. This is not just a story about betrayal. This is a story about what happens when a predator underestimates his prey. Stay with me until the end, because the twist that destroys him is something you will never see coming. Before we begin, let me tell you what this story will give you. This is not just entertainment. This is a blueprint for survival. You will learn how one woman documented every detail of her abuse and used it as ammunition in court. You will discover the legal strategies that helped her win custody against a powerful, wealthy opponent. You will understand the warning signs of financial control that most women miss until it is too late. And most importantly, you will hear the truth that changed everything for Grace and might change everything for you. Your worth is not defined by who walks away from you. Your strength is not measured by whether you fall apart. Your future is not determined by the worst thing that has ever happened to you. If you are facing your own impossible situation right now, this story is for you. If you know someone who needs to hear that survival is possible, this story is for them. This is a story about rising from ashes, about discovering strength you did not know you had, about learning that the people who try to break you are not powerful. They are terrified of what you might become. It is about mothers who refuse to surrender, about women who fight back, about the moment when a victim becomes a warrior. And it is about karma, beautiful, patient, devastating karma. Because in this story, the man who thought he was untouchable learns the hardest lesson of all. Never underestimate a woman with nothing left to lose. The moment my triplets took their first breath, my husband signed papers to erase me from existence. But he made one mistake. He never asked about my mother's maiden name. My name is Grace Mitchell, and this is the story of how I lost everything and found something I never knew I had. Not money, not revenge, not even justice, though that came eventually. What I found was something far more valuable. I found myself. But before I could find anything, I had to lose it all first. Every single piece of the life I thought I had built, every illusion I had wrapped around myself like a protective blanket, every lie I had believed because believing felt easier than questioning. The contractions started at 2:17 in the morning, 8 weeks before my due date. I remember the exact time because I was staring at the digital clock on my nightstand, wondering why I had woken up with such a strange feeling in my abdomen. At first, I thought it was just the babies moving. Triplets do not leave much room for comfort, and by 32 weeks, I had grown accustomed to constant discomfort. Then the pain hit. It was not like the practice contractions the doctors had warned me about. Those were uncomfortable but manageable, like a tight band squeezing and releasing. This was different. This was a fist closing around my entire midsection and refusing to let go. This was my body screaming that something had gone terribly, catastrophically wrong. I reached across the bed for Marcus, my husband of 5 years, the CEO of Coal Industries, the man who had promised to love me through sickness and health, through good times and bad, until death do us part. His side of the bed was empty. The sheets were cold. I tried to sit up, but another contraction hit me so hard I doubled over instead. When I could finally breathe again, I grabbed my phone and called him. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, then voicemail. "Hi, you have reached Marcus Cole. Leave a message and I will return your call at my earliest convenience. I hung up and called again. Same result, 6 rings, voicemail. The robotic cheerfulness of his recorded voice mocking me while I lay alone in our penthouse apartment, bleeding onto sheets that cost more than most people's monthly rent. On the third attempt, something different happened. Someone answered, but it was not Marcus. A woman's voice came through the speaker, sleepy, annoyed, confused. "Who is this?" she demanded. I opened my mouth to respond, but another contraction stole my breath. By the time the pain released its grip, the line was dead. Looking back now, I realize that phone call should have told me everything I needed to know. A woman answering my husband's phone at 2 in the morning. Her voice thick with sleep, as if she had been lying beside him when the ringing disturbed her rest. The quick disconnection, as if someone had grabbed the phone from her hand and ended the call before more questions could be asked. But in that moment, I did not have the luxury of analysis. I did not have time to wonder or worry or piece together the obvious truth. I was bleeding, my babies were coming too early, and I was completely alone. I managed to crawl to the bathroom, leaving a trail of blood on the imported Italian marble that Marcus had insisted we install during our renovation last year. $17,000 for a bathroom floor. I remember thinking that number as I dragged myself across it, watching my blood pool in the delicate gray veins of the stone. $17,000, and now it was ruined. Marcus would be furious. It seems absurd now that my mind would focus on something so trivial while my body was fighting for survival. But that is what 5 years of marriage to a controlling man does to you. It rewires your priorities. It makes you worry about his reaction before your own well-being. It turns you into a person who apologizes for bleeding on expensive floors instead of screaming for help. I called 911 from the bathroom floor. The dispatcher was calm and professional, asking questions I could barely answer through the waves of pain. "Ma'am, how far along are you in your pregnancy? 32 weeks. Triplets. Are you experiencing bleeding?" "Yes, a lot. Is anyone there with you?" "No, I'm alone. Help is on the way, ma'am. Stay on the line with me." The ambulance arrived in 11 minutes. I know this because I counted every second, clinging to the dispatcher's voice like a lifeline, while my body tried to expel 3 lives that were not ready to enter the world. The paramedics found me curled on the bathroom floor in a pool of my own blood. They moved with urgent efficiency, lifting me onto a stretcher, starting an IV line, shouting medical terminology I did not understand. Suspected placental abruption. 32 weeks gestation with triplets. Significant hemorrhage. We need the OR ready on arrival. Placental abruption. I learned later what those words meant. My placenta had begun separating from my uterine wall, cutting off oxygen and nutrients to my babies, while causing potentially fatal bleeding for me. A condition that could kill mother and children within minutes if not treated immediately. In the ambulance, racing through the empty Chicago streets with sirens screaming, I tried Marcus one more time. This time, no one answered at all. 6 rings, then voicemail, again and again and again. I left a message. My voice was barely a whisper, broken by pain and fear in the beginning of a terrible understanding. "Marcus, I am in an ambulance. Something is wrong with the babies. Please come to Chicago Memorial. Please, I need you." He never called back. I arrived at Chicago Memorial Hospital at 2:47 in the morning. By 2:53, I was being rushed into emergency surgery. Doctors and nurses surrounded me, their faces masked, their voices calm but urgent. "Grace, can you hear me? I am Dr. Sarah Chen. We need to perform an emergency cesarean section. Your babies are in distress and we need to get them out now." I tried to nod, tried to speak, tried to do anything except lie there feeling helpless and terrified. "Is my husband here?" I managed to ask. "Please, someone needs to call my husband." "We will take care of that," another voice said. "Right now, we need you to focus on staying calm." They placed a mask over my face. Someone told me to count backward from 10. I made it to 7 before the darkness swallowed me whole. What happened next, I learned later from hospital records, security footage, and witness testimonies that would eventually become evidence in a courtroom. But let me tell you now, as if I had been watching from somewhere outside my own body, because in a way, I was. My heart stopped twice on that operating table. For a total of 4 minutes and 37 seconds, I was clinically dead. The surgical team brought me back both times, fighting against my failing body while simultaneously trying to save 3 premature lives. My daughter was born first at 3:23 in the morning. She weighed 2 pounds and 11 ounces. Her first cry was more of a whisper, a tiny sound barely audible above the beeping machines and shouted instructions. My first son followed at 3:25, 2 pounds and 14 ounces. He did not cry at all, and for 17 terrifying seconds, the neonatal team worked to stimulate his breathing. My second son arrived at 3:27, the smallest of the 3, at 2 pounds and 7 ounces. His lungs were the weakest, and he was immediately intubated. 3 tiny lives, each one small enough to fit in the palm of an adult hand, each one fighting for every single breath. Each one unaware that 10 steps down the hallway, their father was signing papers to erase their mother from existence. Marcus arrived at the hospital at 3:15 in the morning, 8 minutes before our daughter was born. He was not alone. His personal attorney, Richard Vance, walked beside him, carrying a leather briefcase that looked too full for a routine hospital visit. I have watched the security footage of their arrival more times than I should admit. I have studied every frame, searching for something I might have missed during our 5 years together. Some sign that I should have seen. Some warning I should have heeded. Marcus did not rush through the hospital doors. He did not ask the reception desk for directions to the labor and delivery wing. He did not look panicked or worried or even particularly concerned. He walked with the measured pace of a man arriving at a business meeting. He straightened his tie in the reflection of a window. He checked his phone, typed something, and smiled at whatever response he received. At 3:17, while surgeons were cutting into my unconscious body, Marcus stopped outside the surgical suite and spoke with a nurse. "I am here for Grace Mitchell," he said. "She was brought in earlier." The nurse checked her tablet. "Are you the husband?" "Yes. She is in emergency surgery right now. Complications with the delivery. You can wait in the family lounge and someone will update you as soon as possible." Marcus nodded, but he did not move toward the family lounge. Instead, he turned to Richard. "Is this going to be a problem?" he asked. Richard shook his head. "It might actually make things easier. She is unconscious, cannot contest anything until it is already done." Marcus pulled out his phone again. The text message on his screen, which was later recovered during the federal investigation, was from a contact labeled S. "Is it done yet?" the message asked. Marcus typed back, "Almost. She is still in surgery. This is the cleanest exit possible." They found a quiet corner of the hallway away from the main traffic of nurses and doctors. Richard opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder thick with legal documents. Divorce papers, set division agreements, custody petitions, all prepared months in advance, waiting for exactly the right moment. "You understand that timing is critical," Richard said. "The Mercer estate probate is scheduled to close in 6 weeks. If you are still married when the inheritance is finalized, she automatically becomes entitled to half of everything that comes through. If the divorce is final before that date, you maintain separate property rights." Marcus took the pen Richard offered. His signature was elegant, practiced, and utterly without hesitation. "What about the children?" Marcus asked. Richard smiled. "That is the elegant part. With Grace in a medically compromised state, we can file for temporary emergency custody. By the time she is recovered enough to contest, we will have established primary caregiver status. And if she fights it, she will not have the resources to fight. All joint accounts have already been transferred. Her credit cards are canceled as of midnight. She has no income, no savings, and no family willing to help her." Richard paused. "She will have no choice but to accept whatever terms we offer." Marcus signed the final page at 3:47 in the morning, the exact moment that Dr. Chen was using a defibrillator to restart my heart for the second time. When the lead surgeon finally emerged from the operating room, exhausted and pale, her mask hanging from one ear, she found Marcus and Richard reviewing documents like they were closing a real estate transaction. "Mr. Cole," Dr. Chen said, "your wife made it. The surgery was extremely difficult, but she is stable now. The babies are alive, very small and very fragile, but alive. They are in the NICU." Marcus did not look up from the papers in his hand. "Where do I sign the discharge forms?" he asked. Dr. Chen stared at him. I do not think you understand. Your wife nearly died. She coded twice on the table. She lost over 3 liters of blood. She needs at least a week of hospitalization, probably more. Marcus finally raised his eyes. When can she be moved to a standard room? We will need the private suite for someone else. The surgeon's expression shifted from confusion to something colder. Mr. Cole, your wife just gave birth to 3 premature infants under life-threatening circumstances. Your children are in incubators fighting for survival. And you are asking about room availability. I am asking about logistics, Marcus said smoothly. Someone has to think practically. Dr. Chen did not respond. She simply turned and walked away, her shoes squeaking against the hospital floor. Marcus returned his attention to Richard. Make sure the paperwork is filed first thing in the morning. I want this finalized before she wakes up. And the children. Marcus hesitated for the first time. His eyes flickered toward the NICU wing, where 3 tiny lives were connected to machines that breathed for them, fed them, kept their hearts beating. The children are assets, Marcus said finally. We will deal with them accordingly. He did not visit the NICU. He did not ask to see his newborn babies. He did not even ask if they had names. He simply straightened his tie, picked up his briefcase, and walked out of the hospital. His expensive shoes clicked against the floor like a countdown, each step carrying him further from the family he had created and closer to the destruction he had planned. But Marcus made one critical error that night, one small oversight that he would not discover for weeks, an oversight that would eventually bring his entire empire crashing down around him. When the hospital clerk printed the identification bracelets for my newborn babies, she followed standard protocol for complicated births involving unconscious mothers. She pulled my emergency contact information and found my mother's name listed. Evelyn Mercer. The clerk had no way of knowing the significance of that name. She was simply following procedure, ensuring that proper family lineage was documented for the medical records. So on 3 tiny plastic bracelets, wrapped around 3 impossibly small wrists, she printed a name that meant nothing to anyone in that hospital. Baby A. Mitchell Mercer. Baby B. Mitchell Mercer. Baby C. Mitchell Mercer. Marcus never saw those bracelets. He never asked. He did not care enough to look at his own children, let alone check the names on their identification bands. And he had no idea that the name Mercer would freeze the blood in his veins when he finally discovered what it meant. I woke to the sound of machines beeping in uneven rhythms, as if the room itself could not decide whether I should live or fade away. My throat burned from the breathing tube that had kept me alive during surgery. My abdomen screamed with pain from the emergency cesarean. Every muscle in my body felt like it had been torn apart and carelessly reassembled. But my first conscious thought was not about my own suffering. My babies. Where are my babies? Please, someone tell me my babies are alive. The words came out as a ragged whisper, barely audible above the mechanical sounds of my own survival. But someone heard me. The nurse who responded was named Dolly Patterson, 58 years old, with silver hair pulled back in a practical bun and kind eyes that had seen every variety of human behavior a hospital could produce. She would become one of my closest allies in the weeks to come, but in that moment, she was simply the first person to treat me like a human being since my world had collapsed. Easy there, sweetheart, Dolly said, her southern accent softening the clinical sterility of the room. Do not try to talk too much just yet. You have been through a war, and your body needs time to remember how to function. My babies, I insisted, fighting against the fog of pain medication. Please, are they alive? Dolly hesitated. It was the smallest pause, barely a fraction of a second, but I caught it. And in that tiny moment of hesitation, my heart cracked open with terror. They are in the NICU, Dolly finally said. Very small and very fragile, but yes, honey. Your babies are alive, all 3 of them. Tears spilled from my eyes before I could stop them, running down my temples and soaking into the thin hospital pillow. They were alive. My children were alive. Whatever else had happened, whatever else was coming, my babies had survived. I tried to sit up, desperate to see them, to touch them, and to prove to myself that they existed outside of the nightmare I had been living. But the moment I moved, pain ripped through my midsection so violently that I cried out. Dolly pressed me gently back against the mattress. None of that now. You have got more stitches in you than a quilt at a county fair. Moving around is not in the cards for at least another day or two. I need to see them, I whispered. Please, I need to see my babies. And you will, Dolly promised. But first, we need to make sure you are stable enough to make the trip. The NICU is on a different floor, and right now, you could not make it across this room without passing out. I closed my eyes, accepting the truth of her words even as everything inside me screamed to ignore them. Where is my husband? I asked. Please tell Marcus I am awake. He needs to know. That was when Dolly's expression changed. The warmth did not disappear exactly, but something else crept in around the edges. Something that looked almost like anger, or maybe pity, or maybe both at once. Sweetheart, she began carefully, there is something you need to know. Before she could finish, the door swung open without a knock. A man in a gray suit entered, carrying a tablet with the detached efficiency of someone accustomed to delivering unpleasant news. No flowers, no warmth, no human compassion whatsoever. Miss Mitchell, he announced, I am Robert Hayes with the hospital's legal liaison department. There are some matters we need to discuss regarding your stay. I frowned, confusion mixing with the lingering fog of medication. Legal liaison, why would legal need to talk to me? Where is Marcus? Hayes consulted his tablet, scrolling through information with practiced disinterest. Your marital status underwent a change earlier this morning, he said. The divorce was finalized at 3:47 a.m. The words did not make sense. I heard them, processed each syllable individually, but my brain refused to assemble them into meaning. That is impossible, I said. I was unconscious. I was in surgery. I nearly died. Your signature was already on file from prior medical consent documents. Hayes did not look up from his screen. The filing was processed according to standard protocols for cases involving incapacitated parties. No. My voice cracked on the single syllable. No, he would not do that. Not today. Not after everything that happened. He already has. Hayes finally raised his eyes to meet mine. He turned the tablet toward me, and there it was. Marcus's elegant signature. My name in a different font, clearly copied from somewhere else. A timestamp. A case number. All of it legal. All of it final. The room tilted violently. I gripped the hospital sheets so hard my knuckles turned white, trying to anchor myself to something solid while everything else spun out of control. Hayes continued speaking, oblivious to the fact that his words were demolishing the foundation of my entire existence. Because the divorce is finalized, your insurance coverage through Mr. Cole's employer-provided plan has been terminated, effective immediately. We will need to reassign your room to a patient with the current coverage. I could barely breathe. The pain in my abdomen was nothing compared to the pressure crushing my chest. My husband had divorced me while I was unconscious, while I was dying on an operating table, while our children were fighting for their lives in incubators, and he had made sure I would wake up with nothing. Regarding your children, Hayes continued, my head snapped up. My children? What about my children? There will be a temporary review of custodial authority. Given your current medical condition and lack of financial resources, the biological father has petitioned for an emergency assessment of parental fitness. The biological father, not my husband, not Marcus. The biological father, as if we had never been married at all, as if our 5 years together had been erased along with my signature on those divorce papers. I have not even held them yet, I whispered. I almost died giving birth to them, and I have not even touched them. That will be determined by the assessment, Hayes replied. Until the review is complete, visitation may be restricted. He left without another word. No sympathy, no acknowledgement of the devastation he had just delivered. Just another task completed, another uncomfortable conversation checked off his list. Dolly moved closer to my bed. Her hand found mine and squeezed tight. Listen to me, she said, her voice fierce despite its quiet volume. I have been working labor and delivery for 30 years. I have seen every kind of husband walk through those doors. Men who fainted at the first sight of blood. Men who cried harder than their wives during delivery. Men who proposed again in the recovery room. Men who confessed to affairs while holding their newborns. She paused, making sure I was looking at her. But I have never, not once in 3 decades, seen a man divorce his wife while she was bleeding out on an operating table. That is not just cruel. That is a special kind of evil. And evil men are not as smart as they think they are. They make mistakes. You just have to be ready when they do. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to find some reservoir of strength inside myself, some well of fight that had not been completely drained. But at that moment, I had nothing. I was empty, hollowed out. "What am I supposed to do?" I asked. First, Dolly said, "You are going to breathe. Then you are going to ask for copies of every document they just showed you. And then you are going to write everything down. Every name, every time, every word anyone says to you. Do you understand? Why? Because crazy people do not keep records." She pulled a pen from her scrubs pocket and pressed it into my palm. "But smart women do. And honey, you are going to need to be the smartest woman in every room from now on." Within an hour, I was transferred from my private recovery suite to a cramped, windowless room on a different floor. The walls were painted a sickly shade of yellow that might have been cheerful 40 years ago, but now just looked diseased. A single fluorescent light flickered overhead, buzzing with each uneven pulse. The mattress was thin enough to feel every spring through the worn sheets. The room smelled of industrial cleaner and despair. My belongings, everything I had brought to the hospital in preparation for my delivery, fit into a single plastic bag. The beautiful handmade blankets I had chosen for the babies. The carefully selected outfits for their first photographs. The journal I had been keeping throughout my pregnancy, filled with hopes and dreams and letters to children I had not yet met. All of it shoved into a bag like garbage. My pain medication was reduced because, as one nurse explained with obvious discomfort, extended opioid coverage requires authorization from a primary insurance carrier, and we do not currently have that on file for you. I lay in that flickering room and began to understand the full scope of what Marcus had done. This was not just betrayal. This was not just abandonment. This was systematic destruction. Every piece of my life that he had touched, which was everything, had been rigged to collapse the moment he walked away. I had no money. All our accounts were joint, which meant they were controlled by him. My credit cards were canceled. I had not worked in 4 years, not since Marcus convinced me that my corporate law career was unnecessary stress when he could provide everything we needed. I had no family. My mother and I had not spoken in 6 years, not since she warned me about Marcus before our wedding, and I dismissed her concerns as jealousy. I had no friends. Over the course of our marriage, Marcus had systematically isolated me from everyone who might have supported me. He never forbade me from seeing people. He was too sophisticated for that. He simply made it inconvenient, made comments about how my friends did not understand our lifestyle, scheduled trips and events that coincided with birthday parties and reunions. Slowly, gradually, imperceptibly, he had cut every connection until I had no one left. I had no resources, no allies, no safety net of any kind. And now I did not even have my children. I reached for my phone with trembling hands and dialed Marcus's number. A recorded message played. "The number you are trying to reach is not accepting calls from this line." He had blocked me. I tried again, using the hospital room phone. This time it rang through to voicemail. "Hi, you have reached Marcus Cole. Leave a message and I will return your call at my earliest convenience. Marcus, it is Grace. I do not know what happened. I do not understand what is going on. Please call me back. Please, we need to talk about the babies. They need both of us right now." The message did not deliver. I found out later that he had blocked that number too, along with every other number associated with the hospital. I sent text messages. I sent emails. I tried every form of communication I could think of. Silence. Complete and absolute silence. That night, alone in my flickering room, I allowed myself to break. I sobbed until my stitches screamed in protest. I cried until no more tears would come. I mourned the life I thought I had, the marriage I thought was real, the future I thought was waiting for me. But somewhere in the depths of that grief, something else began to stir. Something small and stubborn and refusing to die completely. My children were alive. They were in the same building, just floors away, fighting their own battles for survival. They did not know yet that their mother existed. They did not know that someone loved them more than life itself. They did not know that I would burn the entire world down before I let anyone take them from me. I reached for the pen Dolly had given me. I found the back of a hospital menu, the only paper available in my stripped-down room. And I started writing. 3:47 a.m. Divorce finalized while I was in surgery. Signature forged. Insurance terminated immediately. Room transferred. Custody review initiated. Names, dates, times, details. Everything I could remember. Everything that might matter later. I did not know yet how I would fight. I did not know what weapons I would use or where I would find them. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was not going to let Marcus win. The next morning arrived gray and cold, matching the hollow feeling in my chest. I had not slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my babies in their incubators, connected to machines that breathed for them, surrounded by strangers instead of their mother. At 7:30, I pressed the call button and asked to see my children. The nurse who responded was not Dolly. This one was younger, nervous, avoiding my eyes as she checked my vitals. I will have to check with the nursing supervisor about visitation, she said. There are some administrative issues with your file. What kind of issues? She would not answer. She just hurried out of the room, promising to send someone who could explain. An hour later, a hospital administrator appeared, a woman in her 50s with a practiced smile that did not reach her eyes. Miss Mitchell, she began, I understand you have requested to visit the NICU. I want to see my children, I said. I am their mother. I have every right to see them. The administrator's smile flickered. Unfortunately, there is a temporary hold on your visitation privileges. A hold? Based on what? A petition was filed this morning by the children's biological father. He has requested an assessment of your fitness to interact with medically fragile infants, given your current mental state, my current mental state. I repeated the words slowly, trying to understand. I just had major surgery. I am recovering in a hospital. What exactly is wrong with my mental state? The petition cites concerns about postpartum instability. Until the assessment is complete, we cannot authorize unsupervised contact. Unsupervised, I am their mother. Miss Mitchell, please try to remain calm. Do not tell me to remain calm. My voice rose despite my efforts to control it. I nearly died bringing those children into this world. I have not even touched them yet. And you are telling me that their father, who has not visited them once, who walked out of this hospital without even looking at them, has the authority to keep me away. The administrator stepped back slightly. I understand this is upsetting. You do not understand anything. I struggled to sit up despite the pain. I want to speak to a patient advocate. I want copies of this petition. I want to know exactly what evidence was submitted and who submitted it. The administrator blinked. She clearly had not expected me to respond with demands rather than tears. She stammered. I will see what I can arrange. You will not see, you will do it. I am a licensed attorney, which technically I was, even if I had not practiced in years. I know my rights. And I know that denying a mother access to her newborn children based on an unsubstantiated petition from an absent father violates approximately 7 different hospital policies and at least 3 state regulations. The administrator left quickly. I collapsed back against the thin pillow, exhausted from the effort of pretending to be stronger than I felt. But something had shifted in that conversation. Some part of me that had been dormant for years, beaten down by 5 years of marriage to a man who needed me to be small, had started to wake up. An hour later, I was in a wheelchair being pushed through hospital corridors by an orderly who had been instructed to take me to the patient advocate's office. Every bump sent shockwaves of pain through my healing incision, but I refused to ask him to slow down. I refused to show weakness of any kind. The patient advocate was a tired-looking woman named Sandra, who worked from a cluttered office on the 3rd floor. She clearly expected me to cry, accept whatever crumbs of comfort she offered, and go away quietly. Instead, I arrived with my hospital menu covered in notes and a list of specific demands. I need documentation of the petition that was filed against me, I said. I need copies of any statements submitted regarding my mental fitness. I need the name and credentials of every medical professional involved in the assessment decision. And I need a clear explanation of the appeals process. Sandra stared at me. Most patients do not ask for these things, she said. I am not most patients. I am a mother whose children were taken from her based on allegations I have not been allowed to see or respond to. That is a violation of due process. She shuffled papers nervously. I will see what I can do. I will return tomorrow at 9 a.m., I said. Please have the documents ready. The orderly wheeled me back to my room. Along the way, we passed the NICU. Through the glass windows, I could see the rows of incubators, the soft glow of warming lights, the gentle movement of nurses checking monitors. Somewhere in there were my babies, my daughter, my sons, 3 tiny lives that I had carried for 8 months, that I had sung to and talked to and dreamed about. 3 tiny lives that did not know their mother was only feet away, fighting with everything she had to reach them. The orderly slowed as we passed the doors. Do you want to stop for a minute? He asked quietly. Just to look. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He parked the wheelchair in front of the window, and I pressed my palm against the cold glass. Somewhere in that room, my children were breathing. They were alive. They were waiting for me, even if they did not know it yet. I will get to you, I whispered. I promise. Mommy is coming. We stayed there for 5 minutes before the orderly gently reminded me that we needed to return to my room. I did not argue. I did not have the strength. But as we rolled away from the NICU, I made myself another promise. Tomorrow, I would not just look through glass. Tomorrow, I would find a way inside. That afternoon, I did something I had avoided for 6 years. I called my mother. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. A familiar voice, older than I remembered but still unmistakably hers. You have reached Evelyn Mercer. I am not available at the moment. Please leave a message. I took a deep breath. Mom, it is Grace. I know we have not talked in a long time. I know I said some terrible things the last time we spoke, but I am in trouble. I am in the hospital in Chicago. The babies came early, and Marcus, I paused, fighting to keep my voice steady. Marcus is gone. He filed for divorce while I was in surgery. He is trying to take the children. I do not know what to do. I do not have anyone else to call. I gave her the hospital name and my room number. Please, Mom, if you get this, please call me back. I need help. I hung up and waited. Minutes passed, then hours. The phone did not ring. By evening, I had accepted that she was not going to call. Why would she? The last time we spoke, I had accused her of being jealous of my happiness, of trying to sabotage my marriage, of never wanting me to succeed. I had chosen Marcus over her without hesitation, and now I was alone, just as she had probably expected. Dolly appeared at my door at around 8 p.m. carrying a small paper bag. I brought you something, she said, settling into the chair beside my bed. Hospital food is punishment enough. Nobody heals on Jell-O and sadness. She pulled out a cheeseburger wrapped in foil, still warm. The smell of grease and salt hit me, and my stomach growled so loudly we both laughed. I cannot remember the last time I had a cheeseburger, I admitted. Marcus did not believe in fast food. Well, Marcus is not here, is he? Dolly unwrapped the burger and handed it to me. And you need calories to heal, doctor's orders. Are you a doctor now? I have been doing this job longer than most doctors have been alive. That is close enough. I took a bite and the taste was so simple and perfect that tears sprang to my eyes, which was ridiculous. It was just a cheeseburger. But somehow that small act of kindness, that tiny gesture of human caring, broke through the walls I had been building. I told Dolly everything, about the forged divorce papers, about the blocked phone numbers, about the custody petition, about calling my mother and getting only silence in return. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Can I tell you something? She finally said. Of course, I've been watching you for 3 days now. Since they brought you in, I have been paying attention. And here is what I see. She leaned forward. I see a woman who lost more blood than most people have in their body. I see a woman who woke up to discover her husband betrayed her in the worst way imaginable. I see a woman whose children were taken away before she could even touch them. I see a woman who has been knocked down so hard that most people would never get up. She paused. And I also see a woman who is still fighting, still thinking, Dilbudo, making plans. You asked for documentation. You quoted regulations. You called your mother even though it terrified you. That is not weakness, sweetheart. That is survival. I do not feel like I am surviving. I admitted. I feel like I am drowning. Drowning people do not make lists, Dolly said. Drowning people do not demand to speak to patient advocates. Drowning people do not eat cheeseburgers. I laughed despite myself. It was a wet, broken sound, but it was real. What do I do now? I asked. Dolly stood up and gathered her things. Now you sleep. Your body needs rest, even if your mind cannot stop racing. And tomorrow you keep fighting. 1 hour at a time, one problem at a time, until something changes. What if nothing changes? She smiled. Something always changes. You just have to be ready when it does. She left, and I lay in the darkness, clutching the greasy wrapper of a cheeseburger like it was made of gold. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow, I keep fighting. The next morning, I woke with a new sense of purpose. My body still ached. My heart still felt shattered. But somewhere in the night, grief had begun transforming into something harder, something more useful. Rage. At 9 a.m. sharp, I returned to Sandra's office. This time, I did not wait for her to greet me. I need those documents, I requested, I said. And I need to file a formal complaint against the hospital for accepting a custody petition without properly verifying the submitting party's standing. Sandra's eyes widened. Miss Mitchell, I understand you are upset, but perhaps we should discuss this calmly. I am completely calm. I leaned forward in my wheelchair. But I am also aware that this hospital accepted a petition to restrict my parental access from a man who has not visited his children once since they were born, a man who left the hospital immediately after signing divorce papers while I was in life-threatening surgery, a man who has made no attempt to contact the NICU staff, attend any medical consultations, or demonstrate any interest whatsoever in his children's welfare. Sandra shifted uncomfortably. I am also aware, I continued, that I have the right to review any documents filed regarding my fitness as a parent. I have the right to respond to any allegations made against me, and I have the right to see my children unless a court, not a hospital administrator, has legally restricted that access. The petition was filed by the children's father, Sandra said weakly. The petition was filed by a stranger who shares DNA with my children, I corrected. Being a biological father requires nothing but a functional reproductive system. Being a parent requires actual parenting, and I am the only person in this situation who has demonstrated any interest in actually raising these babies. Sandra opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. She handed it to me without meeting my eyes. This is everything we have on file. I took the folder and began reading. The petition was thin. 2 pages of generic concerns about postpartum instability, a request for psychological evaluation, a suggestion that the mother might pose a danger to medically fragile infants. There was no specific evidence, no witness statements, no medical documentation supporting the claims, just Marcus's signature and the weight of his name. This is nothing, I said. This is a list of concerns with no substantiation whatsoever. It was enough to initiate a review, Sandra said. Then your review process is inadequate. I am requesting an immediate reversal of the visitation restriction. I cannot authorize that. Then find someone who can. I am not leaving this office until I speak with someone who has actual decision-making authority. Sandra picked up her phone. 2 hours later, I was sitting in a conference room with the hospital's chief medical officer and the head of the legal department. They had expected a crying, broken woman they could placate with sympathetic words and vague promises. Instead, they got a former corporate attorney who had spent the previous night memorizing hospital policy documents and relevant state regulations. I presented my case methodically. The forged divorce papers, which I had photographed before they were taken from me, the timeline showing Marcus's absence from all medical consultations, the lack of any substantive evidence supporting the fitness concerns, the violation of standard notification procedures for custody petitions. By the end of the meeting, the chief medical officer was looking at the legal department head with barely concealed alarm. We may need to reconsider the visitation restriction, the legal head said carefully. You need to reverse it immediately, I said, and you need to document that it was implemented improperly in the first place. Because if this goes to court, and believe me, it will, you want to be on the right side of the documentation. They exchanged another look. Give us an hour, the chief medical officer said. I waited in that conference room for exactly 53 minutes. Then the door opened, and a nurse I did not recognize stepped in. "Miss Mitchell," she said, "I have been asked to escort you to the NICU. Your visitation privileges have been restored." I did not cry. I did not celebrate. I simply nodded and said, "Let us go." The NICU was quieter than I expected. Soft lights, gentle sounds, the low hum of machines working to keep tiny lives alive. I was guided past rows of incubators, each one containing someone's miracle, someone's desperate hope. And then I saw them. 3 incubators in a row. 3 plastic boxes containing everything I had left in the world. I approached slowly, afraid to breathe too loudly, afraid to disturb the delicate balance of machines and medication keeping them alive. My daughter was in the first incubator. The nameplate read Baby Girl Mitchell Mercer. She was so small. Her entire hand would not have covered my thumb. Her skin was translucent, showing the spider web of veins beneath. Tubes connected her to monitors, to IV lines, to a breathing apparatus that helped her lungs do work they were not yet strong enough to do alone. But she was alive. Her chest rose and fell. Her fingers twitched. She was fighting. "Hi, sweetheart," I whispered, pressing my hand against the plastic. "It is Mommy. I am here. I am finally here." My first son was in the next incubator. Baby boy A. Mitchell Mercer, slightly larger than his sister, but still impossibly fragile. His eyes were closed, but his face seemed peaceful. My second son was the smallest. Baby boy B. Mitchell Mercer, the one who had needed immediate intubation, the one whose lungs were weakest. He had more tubes than his siblings, more monitors, more machines. But he was alive too. All 3 of them were alive. A nurse appeared beside me. "Sarah," according to her name tag. "They have been waiting for you," she said gently. I looked at her, confused. "Babies know," Sarah explained. "They can sense when their mother is near. Their vital signs have been more stable in the last hour than they have been since admission." I did not know if that was true or just a kindness meant to comfort me, but I chose to believe it. "Would you like to hold her?" Sarah asked, gesturing to my daughter. "We have been waiting for you to be well enough for kangaroo care." Kangaroo care. Skin-to-skin contact. The one thing every medical study showed was crucial for premature infant development. The one thing I had been denied for 4 days. "Yes," I whispered. "Please." "Yes." Sarah guided me to a rocking chair positioned between the incubators. She helped me open my hospital gown and then carefully, so carefully, lifted my daughter from her plastic enclosure. The moment that tiny body touched my chest, something inside me realigned. Some broken piece snapped back into place. She was warm. She was real. She was mine. Her breathing changed, becoming slower and more regular. Her heart rate steadied on the monitor. She made a small sound, not quite a cry, more like a sigh of recognition. "Hi, baby," I said, tears streaming down my face. "Mommy is here. I am so sorry it took so long. But I am here now. I am not going anywhere." I held her for 2 hours. Then I held each of my sons in turn. I memorized their faces, their fingers, the sounds they made, the way they felt against my skin. I whispered promises I intended to keep. "I will protect you," I told them. "No matter what happens, no matter what it costs, I will never let anyone take you from me again." For those few hours, the world outside that NICU ceased to exist. There was no Marcus, no divorce, no custody battle. There was only a mother holding her children for the first time, beginning the long process of becoming a family. But the world had not forgotten about me. When I finally returned to my room that evening, exhausted but more peaceful than I had felt in days, an envelope was waiting on my bed. Inside was a summons. Marcus had filed for emergency full custody. The hearing was scheduled for 3 days from now. The war was just beginning. I spent the next 72 hours preparing for battle. Without money, without a lawyer, without any of the resources that Marcus commanded, I had only my own mind and determination. I made lists, researched legal precedents, documented every interaction with hospital staff, built my case the way I had once built corporate merger documents, brick by brick, fact by fact. Dolly helped where she could, sneaking me access to a computer in the nurse's station when no one was looking. She also kept me fed, bringing food from the cafeteria and sometimes from her own home. "You are going to need your strength," she said. "Nobody wins a fight on an empty stomach." The legal aid attorney Daniel Reyes showed up on the second day. He was young, overworked, and underfunded, but his eyes sharpened when he saw my documentation. "This signature is clearly forged," he said, examining my photographs of the divorce papers. "The loop on the G is completely different from your verified signatures." I know. I pointed to the comparison images I had prepared. I pulled samples from my hospital admission forms, insurance documents, and the prenatal care consent forms. "The forged signature does not match any of them." Daniel nodded slowly. "We can file an emergency motion to void the divorce based on fraud, and we can challenge the custody petition with evidence of your mental stability." "How long?" I asked. "For the divorce challenge, maybe 48 hours for an initial hearing. For custody," he hesitated, "that depends on the judge. The custody hearing is in 3 days. Then we need to move fast." Daniel worked through the night preparing motions and gathering supporting documentation. I helped where I could, drafting argument summaries and identifying relevant case law. At 8 a.m. on the morning of the custody hearing, Daniel called with news. "The divorce motion was granted," he said, his voice tired but triumphant. "The judge found clear evidence of fraud. The dissolution is void pending full investigation." I sat down heavily on my hospital bed. "Does that affect the custody hearing?" "It should. Marcus filed the custody petition as a non-custodial parent, but if the divorce is voided, you are still legally married. That changes his standing significantly." I felt the first flutter of hope since this nightmare began. Maybe, just maybe, I could win this. The custody hearing was held at 2 p.m. in a family court building downtown. I was still recovering from surgery, still attached to a portable pain management system, but I refused to attend by video. I needed the judge to see me, to see that I was not the unstable, dangerous woman Marcus had painted. Daniel presented our case efficiently. The forged divorce papers, the voided dissolution, the lack of any evidence supporting claims of mental instability, my documented visits to the NICU, where all 3 babies had shown improved vital signs during skin-to-skin contact. Marcus's attorney argued that the custody petition was filed in good faith, based on genuine concerns about postpartum psychological issues. The judge was not convinced. "I am reversing the temporary custody order," she announced. "Miss Mitchell will retain primary custody of the minor children. Mr. Cole may petition for visitation through standard family court procedures." I nearly collapsed with relief. Daniel squeezed my arm. "We won." For approximately 2 hours, I believed that was true. Then Child Protective Services arrived at the hospital. There were 2 of them, a man and a woman in business casual clothes with serious expressions. They found me in the NICU, holding my daughter. "Grace Mitchell," the woman said. "We have received a report regarding the safety of these children." I looked up, confused. "What kind of report?" "An anonymous allegation that you attempted to harm one of the infants during a previous visit." The room tilted. "That is impossible. I was not allowed to visit until this morning. There are records, security footage, witnesses. The report includes a signed-in statement from a hospital employee," the woman continued. "Until we complete our investigation, we need to place the children in protective temporary custody." No, the word came out of me like a physical force. "No, I just won custody. I have a court order. This is a separate matter, Miss Mitchell. Child safety supersedes custody arrangements." They took my babies, one by one, lifting them from my arms, transferring them to a separate room where I was not allowed to follow. I screamed. I tried to stand. My body, still healing from surgery, gave out beneath me. Security guards appeared. Someone injected something into my IV. The last thing I saw before darkness took me was my daughter's face disappearing through the NICU doors. I woke in a room I did not recognize. White walls, a locked door, a small window with wire mesh embedded in the glass. A note sat on the bedside table. Mandatory 72-hour psychiatric evaluation. I had won the custody battle and lost my children anyway. The psychiatric ward was designed to make people doubt their own sanity. The lighting was too bright. The sounds were too muffled. The staff spoke in calm, measured tones that made every emotional response feel like evidence of instability. Dr. William Thorne introduced himself as my evaluating psychiatrist. He was 60 years old, with gray hair and cold eyes that never quite met mine. "How are you feeling today, Grace?" he asked, pen poised over his clipboard. "I want to see the report that was filed against me," I said. "I want to know who submitted it. I want to know what evidence supports these allegations." Dr. Thorne made a note. "You seem agitated. I am being held against my will based on accusations I have not been allowed to examine. Agitation seems like a reasonable response." Another note. "Do you often feel that people are conspiring against you?" I understood then what was happening. Every emotional response would be documented as evidence of instability. Every rational demand would be reframed as paranoid aggression. So I changed tactics. I forced my voice into calm, measured tones. "Dr. Thorne, I am invoking my right to a second opinion from an independent psychiatrist not employed by this facility. I am also requesting that all interactions during this evaluation be documented in writing and provided to me within 24 hours. He stared at me. "I was a corporate attorney before becoming a stay-at-home mother," I said. "I am familiar with patient rights protocols." Dr. Thorne closed his clipboard. "I will see what can be arranged." I did not see him again for the rest of my evaluation. But outside my locked room, the world continued burning. While I was trapped in psychiatric evaluation, Marcus launched his media offensive. I learned about it later from printouts that Dolly smuggled in. The headlines were devastating. "Coal Industries, CEO's wife suffers postpartum psychotic break. Mother removed from hospital after threatening newborns. Concerned father fights to protect vulnerable infants." The articles included photos pulled from security cameras. Me being restrained in the NICU. Me collapsed on the floor, screaming as my children were taken. Me being sedated and wheeled away. Without context, without explanation, the images told exactly the story Marcus wanted. The comment sections were worse. "She is clearly unstable. Those poor babies. He should get full custody. She should never be allowed near children." My reputation was destroyed before I had any chance to defend myself. And while I was locked away, unable to respond, unable to fight, Marcus's lawyers attacked from another direction. Daniel showed up on day 2 of my psychiatric hold. His face told me everything before he spoke. "What happened?" I asked. He sat down heavily. "Marcus filed a civil suit claiming you defrauded him during the marriage. He is seeking to freeze all marital assets. I do not have any assets. He controlled everything. He also filed a motion to have your law license permanently revoked." That made me pause. "It is already lapsed. He is claiming you misrepresented your credentials. It is thin, but it creates complications. Is there more?" Daniel would not meet my eyes. "My organization received a call from one of our major donors. They suggested that your case was creating negative publicity for the foundation." I felt the floor dropping away beneath me. "What are you saying? I have been instructed to withdraw as your attorney." He stood, still unable to look at me. "I am sorry, Grace. I believe you. I believe everything you have told me. But I cannot lose this organization. There are other people who depend on us too." He left. I was alone, locked in a psychiatric ward, labeled crazy. My children in the custody of strangers, my reputation in ruins. No money, no lawyer, no one left to fight for me. Marcus had won. That night, Dolly appeared in my room. I never learned how she got past the security. She probably bribed someone with pie. She sat beside me in the darkness and listened while I cried. "I cannot do this," I told her. "He has taken everything. I have nothing left." "You have your babies," Dolly said. "They are still alive. They are still waiting for their mama. They will not remember me. By the time I get out of here, Marcus will have convinced everyone I am dangerous." Dolly took my hand. "Listen to me," she said. "Something always changes. You just have to be ready when it does." I wanted to believe her. But at that moment, hope felt like a luxury I could no longer afford. On the morning of day 3, something changed. A nurse I did not recognize entered my room at 7 a.m. She checked my vitals without meeting my eyes, then leaned close and whispered, "There is a visitor for you, someone who is not on the approved list." I do not have an approved list. "She says she is your mother." My heart stopped. 5 minutes later, Evelyn Mercer walked through the door. She looked older than I remembered. 62 now, with silver hair and the same sharp eyes that had always seen through every lie I tried to tell. She wore a simple blue dress and carried a leather briefcase. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she sat in the chair beside my bed and said, "I got your voicemail. I called 3 days ago. I was in London for work. I took the first flight back as soon as I heard." I stared at her, not knowing what to feel. Relief, anger, shame. All of it mixed together in a toxic combination that made it hard to breathe. "I know you did not expect to see me," Evelyn said. "I know the last time we spoke, you said things you cannot take back. But I am your mother, and no matter what has happened between us, I was never going to let you face this alone." "You were right," I whispered. "About Marcus. About everything. I should have listened." "Yes," Evelyn said. "You should have. But being right does not feel good when I am watching my daughter be destroyed." She opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. "I did not come empty-handed," she said. "I brought help." The door opened again, and a woman entered. 55 years old, silver gray hair cut short, expensive suit, expression sharp enough to cut glass. "This is Margaret Thornton," Evelyn said. "She has agreed to take your case. I cannot afford an attorney." Margaret sat down, crossing her legs with the casual confidence of someone who had won more battles than she could count. "Your mother called in a favor." I looked at Evelyn. "What kind of favor?" Margaret answered for her. "Your mother worked as a legal secretary at my firm for 23 years. When I was a young associate, I made a critical error on a major case, a filing deadline that would have cost the firm millions. Evelyn caught my mistake and corrected it before anyone noticed. She saved my career. I owed her a debt I could never repay." She turned to face me directly. "Now I have the chance." I felt tears building behind my eyes. "Why?" I asked Evelyn. "Why would you help me after everything I said?" "Because you are my daughter." Evelyn's voice cracked for the first time. "Because I have spent 6 years waiting for this phone call, hoping it would never come but knowing it probably would. Because a mother does not stop being a mother just because her child makes mistakes." She reached into her briefcase and pulled out another folder. "There is something else you need to know," she said. "Something I should have told you years ago." "What?" Evelyn took a deep breath. "Before I explain, I need you to understand why I kept this secret. I was trying to protect you from a world I escaped at great cost. A world of wealth and greed and people who see human beings as assets to be managed. I do not understand. My father," Evelyn said slowly, "was a man named Harrison Mercer. The name meant nothing to me. He was a shipping magnate," Evelyn continued, "one of the most successful businessmen of the 20th century. He built an empire that rivaled anything Marcus Cole could imagine. I still do not understand what this has to do with me." Evelyn met my eyes. "He disowned me when I was 18 years old. I got pregnant by a man he considered beneath me. He told me I was dead to him. So I left. I changed my name. I raised you alone, without any help from his money." "I never knew any of this," I whispered. "I wanted you to have a normal life," Evelyn said. "I wanted to protect you from the poison of inherited wealth, from people who would value you for your bloodline instead of your character." The irony was almost unbearable. "You wanted to protect me from men like Marcus." "Yes, but I married him anyway." "Yes." Margaret leaned forward. "Grace, your grandfather died 3 years ago. His estate has been in probate while lawyers search for his only living descendant." She paused. "That descendant is you, and according to the terms of his will, you are the sole heir to a fortune worth approximately $2.3 billion. The room tilted. "That is impossible." "It is very possible," Margaret said. "And here is what makes it relevant to your situation. Marcus knew." "What?" "He discovered your lineage approximately 2 years ago. That is why he married you. That is why he got you pregnant. That is why he rushed the divorce while you were unconscious. He was trying to establish legal separation before the inheritance was finalized." I felt sick. Everything, my entire marriage, every kiss, every promise, every moment I thought was love. It was all a lie. "If he stayed married to you when the probate closed," Margaret continued, "you would have become entitled to the full inheritance as his wife. By divorcing you beforehand and gaining custody of your children, he could control their share of the estate while appearing to have no direct claim himself. He married me for money, I whispered. Money I did not even know existed. He married you for power, Evelyn said. The money was just the means to that end. I closed my eyes, trying to absorb the magnitude of what I had just learned. My entire life had been a manipulation. Every choice I thought I made freely had been orchestrated by a man who saw me as nothing but a key to unlock a fortune. What do we do now? I asked. Margaret smiled. It was not a warm expression. It was the smile of a predator scenting blood. Now, she said, we destroy him. The psychiatric hold ended 4 hours after Margaret filed her first motion. The independent evaluation she arranged concluded that I was mentally sound, emotionally resilient, and fully capable of caring for my children. But getting out of the psychiatric ward was only the first battle. Over the next 3 weeks, we built our counterattack. Margaret assembled a team that worked around the clock. A forensic accountant named Rachel Stevens traced Marcus's hidden money through offshore accounts and shell corporations. A private investigator documented his complete absence from any parental responsibilities. A media consultant prepared to counter the narrative Marcus had created. And I was not a passive participant in any of it. I reactivated my law license. The Bar Association's review was swift once they saw evidence that Marcus's motion had been based on fraud. I was a licensed attorney again. I helped review documents. I identified inconsistencies in Marcus's financial statements based on conversations I remembered from our marriage. I recalled details about meetings and phone calls that suddenly made sense in a new context. Most importantly, I remembered something I had almost forgotten. The location of Marcus's private safe. He kept it in his home office, a wall safe behind a painting I had always found ugly. I was never allowed to open it, never allowed to know what was inside. But I remembered the combination. Our wedding date, the date Marcus had called the best day of his life. The irony was not lost on me. Getting into the house required planning. Marcus had changed the locks after filing for divorce. The security system had been updated. Armed guards patrolled the property. But Marcus had made a mistake. Several mistakes, actually. He had kept me isolated for so long that he forgot I once had a life outside our marriage. Friends from law school, colleagues from my old firm, people who might be willing to help. One of those friends was a woman named Jessica Park. She had become a prosecutor in the years since we lost touch, specializing in white-collar crime. When I called her and explained my situation, she was immediately interested. This sounds like exactly the kind of case my office should know about, she said. If half of what you are telling me is true, Marcus Cole is looking at federal charges. I have evidence, I said, or at least I know where to find it. Jessica arranged for a warrant. 2 federal agents accompanied me to the house, along with Margaret and a forensic specialist. Marcus was away, meeting with his board of directors. He had no idea what was about to happen. The safe was exactly where I remembered it. The combination worked on the first try. Inside were hard drives, folders, documents that Marcus had kept hidden for years. The forensic specialist began reviewing the contents immediately. His expression grew darker with each file he opened. This is not just tax fraud. Share fraud, he said. There are shipping manifests here that do not match official records. Cargo that was never declared. Payments to accounts that do not officially exist. Jessica leaned over his shoulder. Can you tell what he was shipping? The specialist shook his head. Not yet, but whatever it was, he went to great lengths to hide it. I looked at the stacks of evidence, at the secrets Marcus had kept locked away for years, and felt something shift inside me. For so long, I had been his victim, his prey, his convenience. Now I was his enemy, and I had just found the ammunition to bring him down. The federal investigation moved quickly after that. Jessica's office coordinated with multiple agencies. Subpoenas were issued. Witnesses were interviewed. The full scope of Marcus's crimes began to emerge. It was worse than anyone had imagined. The shipping irregularities were connected to a larger network of illegal activity. Marcus had been using Coal Industries logistics as a front for operations that violated numerous federal laws. The details are still sealed, pending ongoing prosecutions. But let me just say that Marcus Cole was not merely a cheater and a liar. He was a criminal of the worst kind. And I had married him, lived with him, had children with him. The knowledge sat in my stomach like poison for days. How did I not see it? I asked Margaret during one of our preparation sessions. How did I live with that man for 5 years and never suspect? Margaret looked at me with something approaching compassion. Predators are skilled at hiding their true nature. That is what makes them successful. You were not foolish to trust him. He was simply very good at appearing trustworthy. I should have listened to my mother. Margaret shrugged. Perhaps, but hindsight is always clearer than the present. What matters now is what you do with the knowledge you have. What I did was prepare for war. The custody hearing was rescheduled for a Tuesday morning in late April. By then, the federal investigation was ready to proceed. We coordinated timing carefully, ensuring that FBI agents would raid coal industries headquarters at exactly the moment I was presenting my case in family court. The morning of the hearing, I dressed in a navy blue suit I had purchased specifically for this occasion. Simple, professional, strong. Are you ready? Evelyn asked. She had been staying with me since her arrival, helping with the preparations, rebuilding our relationship one conversation at a time. We were not healed, not completely, but we were learning. I'm ready, I said. The courtroom was crowded. Media had caught wind of the case, drawn by the scandal of a CEO divorce and custody battle. They did not know yet about the federal investigation. They did not know what was about to unfold. Marcus was already seated when we arrived. He looked polished and confident, surrounded by an expensive legal team. He did not look at me, but I looked at him. I looked at the man who had manipulated me for 7 years, who had married me for money, who had abandoned me while I lay dying, who had tried to steal my children. And I felt nothing but cold determination. Margaret presented our case methodically. The forged divorce documents, the paid-off psychiatrist, the false CPS report filed by his mistress using a fake identity, the systematic attempt to isolate me from my children through legal manipulation. Then she called Sierra Blake to the stand. Sierra was Marcus's mistress, the woman who had answered his phone the night I went into labor, the one who had filed the false report that got my children taken away. But Sierra had made a deal. In exchange for immunity, she had agreed to testify about everything she knew. Miss Blake, Margaret began, can you describe your relationship with Marcus Cole? We were romantically involved for approximately 3 years. During his marriage to my client. Yes. Can you describe the conversation in which Mr. Cole asked you to file a false report with Child Protective Services? Marcus's attorney objected. The judge overruled. Sierra took a deep breath. Marcus told me that Grace was going to ruin everything. He said she was trying to take his money, his company, his children. He said we needed to make sure she could not fight back. And how did you accomplish that? I posed as a hospital employee and filed a report claiming I had witnessed Grace attempting to harm one of the babies. She paused. It was not true. I had never even seen Grace with the children. I filed the report because Marcus asked me to. The courtroom erupted. The judge called for order. Marcus's face went pale. At exactly 11:42 a.m., federal agents entered Coal Industries headquarters with warrants. By 12:15, the news had reached the courthouse. Marcus Cole was being indicted on multiple federal charges. His assets were frozen. His passport was flagged. The judge took a brief recess to review the new information. When court resumed, Marcus was no longer confident. His attorneys were scrambling. His world was collapsing in real time. The judge delivered her ruling at 2:30 p.m. In matters of custody, she said, this court must consider the best interests of the children. The evidence presented today shows a clear pattern of fraud, manipulation, and deliberate attempts to separate a mother from her newborn children. She looked at Marcus. Mr. Cole, the evidence suggests that your interest in these children is financial rather than parental. You have shown no genuine concern for their welfare. You have shown considerable willingness to harm their mother to achieve your goals. She turned to me. Miss Mitchell, you have demonstrated remarkable resilience under extraordinary circumstances. The court finds no evidence to support claims of mental instability. The court finds no evidence that you pose any risk to your children. She folded her hands. Full custody of the minor children is awarded to Grace Mitchell. Mr. Cole's parental rights are terminated. He is prohibited from any contact with the children or their mother. I heard the words. I understood them. but it took a long moment for the meaning to fully penetrate. I had won. My babies were coming home. The weeks after the custody hearing passed in a blur of legal proceedings and sleepless nights, with 3 infants who were finally in my arms. My children came home from the hospital 2 weeks after the custody ruling. They were still small, still requiring careful monitoring, still more fragile than full-term babies would have been. But they were healthy. They were growing. They were mine. I named them myself, choosing names that carried meaning. My daughter became Hope, because she had been born in the darkest moment of my life, and her existence was proof that darkness does not last forever. My first son became Daniel, after the legal aid attorney who first tried to help me. He had been forced to withdraw, but his initial work had laid the foundation for everything that followed. My second son became Harrison, after the grandfather I never knew. The man whose fortune had been both curse and blessing, whose legacy had nearly destroyed me, but ultimately saved me. Hope, Daniel, and Harrison. 3 lives I had almost lost. 3 reasons to keep fighting. Marcus was arrested on the day of the custody hearing. The federal charges were extensive: tax fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy. And when investigators dug deeper into those shipping manifests, they found evidence of operations that made my stomach turn. He was denied bail. Too much flight risk, the judge said. I watched the news coverage of his arrest from my hospital room, my children sleeping in their bassinets beside me. The camera showed him in handcuffs, his perfectly styled hair disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled. He did not look powerful anymore. He looked small, ordinary, pathetic. I waited to feel something: satisfaction, triumph, perhaps even pity. Instead, I felt only exhaustion and a faint, distant relief. Sierra served as a cooperating witness. Her testimony helped secure additional indictments against several of Marcus's business associates. In exchange, she received a reduced sentence: 3 years in a minimum security facility. I saw her once more in a courthouse hallway after her sentencing hearing. She stopped when she saw me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "For what it is worth," she finally said. "I am sorry." I looked at her, at this woman who had helped destroy my life, who had slept with my husband, who had filed false reports that nearly cost me my children. "No, you are not," I said. "You are sorry you got caught." "There is a difference." She did not respond. She just walked away. The Mercer inheritance was finalized 8 weeks after the custody ruling. $2.3 billion. More money than I could comprehend. Margaret handled most of the legal details. I was too busy changing diapers and feeding schedules and middle-of-the-night wake-up calls to focus on financial matters. But I made a few key decisions. First, I established trust funds for my children, managed by independent trustees with no connection to Marcus or his associates. The money would be there when they needed it, but it would not define them. Second, I donated to causes that mattered: the legal aid organization that had initially tried to help me, shelters for women escaping abusive relationships, medical research for premature infants. Third, I started a foundation, the Mitchell Mercer Foundation for Women in Crisis, dedicated to providing legal assistance, financial support, and practical help to women escaping situations like mine. And fourth, I moved away from Chicago. Not far, just a small town about 2 hours north, a place with good schools and kind neighbors, and no memories of Marcus around every corner. The house I bought was not a mansion. It was a renovated farmhouse with a big backyard and room for a garden. My mother moved into the cottage on the property. We were learning to be family again. Dolly retired from the hospital and appeared on my doorstep 3 months after I moved. "I figured if I was going to spend my golden years anywhere," she said, "it might as well be somewhere with good pie and a friend who owes me." She became the grandmother my children never had, the woman who spoiled them shamelessly and told them stories about how their mama was the bravest person she ever met. I returned to practicing law, but differently than before. I specialized in family law, specifically representing women in divorce cases. I charged on a sliding scale. No one was ever turned away. And slowly, carefully, I began to rebuild my life. There is something I want you to understand about healing. Something I learned through months of therapy and sleepless nights and difficult conversations. Healing is not linear. It is not a steady climb from darkness to light. It is messy and unpredictable and full of setbacks. Some days I felt powerful, capable, grateful for my new life. Other days I cried in the shower until the water ran cold, mourning the woman I used to be before Marcus Cole systematically destroyed her. Both of those experiences were real. Both were part of the same journey. The goal of healing is not to become who you were before the trauma. That person is gone. The goal is to become someone new, someone who carries the scars but is not defined by them, someone who knows what darkness looks like and chooses light anyway. I was not the Grace Mitchell who married Marcus Cole, trusting and naive and so desperate to be loved that she ignored every warning sign. I was someone different now, harder in some ways, softer in others, wiser in ways I wished I did not have to be. But I was still standing, still fighting, still here. And that, I decided, was enough. 1 year after the custody hearing, my life had transformed completely. The triplets were 15 months old, walking unsteadily, babbling in their own private language, developing distinct personalities that amazed me every day. Hope was cautious and observant, watching the world with serious eyes before deciding whether to engage. Daniel was bold and curious, always the first to explore new territory. Harrison was gentle and affectionate, the peacemaker who brought his siblings together when they fought. They were healthy, they were happy, they were loved. My mother and I had found a new rhythm. We were not the mother and daughter we had been before, but we were building something better, more honest, more real. She read to the children every night. She taught them to plant flowers in the garden. She told them stories about strength and resilience and women who refused to give up. Dolly was still making pie every Sunday. She claimed she would stop when she died and not a moment before. And there was someone else in my life now, someone unexpected. His name was Nathan Cross. He was the local veterinarian. We met when one of the barn cats my children insisted on adopting needed medical attention. He was kind, patient, unassuming in a way that initially made me suspicious. "What is wrong with you?" I asked him on our second date. "Why are you so nice?" he laughed. "That is not usually a complaint. I spent 5 years married to a man who seemed nice," I said. "Nice can be a mask for terrible things." Nathan considered this. "Fair enough," he said. "I will tell you my flaws. I work too much. I am terrible at remembering birthdays. I cannot cook anything more complicated than scrambled eggs. And I am probably going to love your kids too much if you let me stick around." I stared at him. That is not what I expected. "What did you expect?" "I do not know. Something dark. Some hidden secret." He shrugged. "Sorry to disappoint you. I am exactly what I appear to be. A small-town veterinarian who really likes animals and thinks you are the most remarkable person he has ever met." "That is concerning," I said. "Why no?" "Because I do not know how to trust people who mean what they say." Nathan smiled. "Then I will just have to keep saying it until you believe me." We took things slowly, very slowly. I needed time to learn that not everyone hid monsters beneath their surface. He seemed to understand that without needing me to explain. "There is no rush," he said on our 6th date. "Good things take time." He was right about that. By the 1-year anniversary of the custody hearing, Nathan had become a regular presence in our lives. He joined us for dinners. He played with the children while I caught up on legal work. He sat with me on the porch in the evenings, not needing to fill the silence with words. "I do not know if I will ever be able to love someone fully again," I told him one night. "Marcus broke something in me. I am not sure it can be repaired." Nathan took my hand. "I am not asking for fully," he said. "I am just asking for a chance." I looked at him in the fading light, at this man who had appeared in my life without agenda, without demands, without any expectation beyond simple companionship. "Okay," I said, "a chance." That spring, I helped 47 women through their divorces. 47 women who walked into my office scared and broken and walked out with plans and hope and someone fighting in their corner. Some of their stories were worse than mine. Women whose husbands had beaten them. Women whose children had been kidnapped. Women who had lost everything and were starting over with nothing. Some of their stories seemed smaller from the outside. Women whose husbands simply left. Women who faced financial uncertainty rather than total devastation. Women whose pain was quieter but no less real. I treated them all the same. Every story mattered. Every woman deserved help. There was one client I remember especially. Her name was Maria. She reminded me of myself 5 years ago. Married to a charming man who controlled every aspect of her life, isolated from family and friends, believing she had no options. You have options, I told her. You have more power than you realize. She did not believe me at first. It took weeks of work, of documenting her husband's behavior, of building a case piece by piece. But we won. She got custody of her children. She got enough assets to start over. She walked out of that courthouse a free woman. "Thank you," she said, crying. "I do not know how to repay you." "You do not owe me anything," I said. "Just promise me that someday when you are able, you will help someone else." She promised. That is how healing spreads. Not through grand gestures or dramatic victories, through small acts of kindness passed from one person to the next, through promises kept, through hands extended in the darkness. I was sitting on my porch one evening, watching the sun set over the fields behind my house, when I realized something. I was happy. Not the desperate, grasping happiness I had chased during my marriage to Marcus. Not the absence of pain masquerading as contentment. Real happiness, the kind that comes from building something meaningful, from loving and being loved, from knowing that the worst is behind you and the future holds possibility instead of fear. My children were healthy, my mother was at peace, my work had purpose. My heart was slowly learning to trust again. I had walked through fire and come out the other side, and I was grateful, more grateful than I had ever been for anything. 2 years have passed since the custody hearing. My children are 3 years old now, beautiful and complicated and exhausting in the best possible ways. They have started preschool, they have friends, they have no memory of the father who tried to steal them for money, and I intend to keep it that way. Nathan moved in 8 months ago. We are engaged, but in no rush to marry. I have learned that the paper does not create commitment. The daily choice does. The showing up does. My mother is 70 now. She moves slower than she used to, but her mind is sharp as ever. She has finally told me the complete story of her father, of her pregnancy, of the choices she made to protect me. I do not agree with all her decisions, but I understand them. Dolly is still making pie every Sunday. She says she will stop when she is dead. I have helped 112 women through their divorces. 112 lives rebuilt. 112 families given a second chance. The foundation I started has grown beyond what I imagined. We have offices in 3 cities now. We have helped thousands of women escape dangerous situations. We have changed laws and policies and the way people think about domestic financial abuse. I am not the broken woman who woke up in a hospital room to discover her world had collapsed. I am someone new, someone stronger, someone who knows exactly what she is capable of. But the story did not end there. Last month, I received a phone call from Margaret. "Grace," she said, "there is something you need to know." Those words had preceded bad news so many times in my life that my stomach immediately clenched. What happened? Marcus made a deal. I sat down slowly. What kind of deal? He testified against people higher in the organization he was involved with. In exchange, his sentence was significantly reduced. He will be eligible for release in 3 years instead of 15. I closed my eyes. Of course. Of course, Marcus had found a way to reduce the consequences of his actions. He always did. There is more, Margaret continued. Of course there is. He filed a motion from prison. He is claiming that the termination of his parental rights was procedurally flawed. He is requesting visitation rights upon his release. The floor dropped away beneath me. He wants to see the children. He wants to try mine. I thought about my 3-year-olds, about Hope, who still sometimes woke from nightmares she could not explain, about Daniel, who asked questions about why other kids had daddies and he did not, about Harrison, who was too young to understand any of it. They did not know Marcus. They did not remember the first weeks of their lives, spent in incubators while their parents fought legal battles. They did not know that their father had tried to steal them for money, had abandoned their mother while she lay dying, and I wanted to keep it that way. What do we do? I asked. Margaret's voice was steady. We have 3 years to prepare. Every loophole, every precedent, every possible angle. By the time he is eligible for release, his motion will be so thoroughly countered that no judge in the country will grant it. Can you guarantee that? A pause. In law, there are no guarantees, but I can promise that I will fight with everything I have. You know I will. I did know that. Margaret had been fighting for me since the day my mother brought her to my psychiatric wardroom. She had never stopped. Okay, I said, call a meeting with the legal team. Let us start building our defense. I hung up the phone and sat in the quiet of my kitchen for a long time. Outside, I could hear my children playing in the backyard. Nathan was with them, his voice mixing with their laughter. My mother was in the garden, probably complaining about the rabbits eating her vegetables. Normal sounds, peaceful sounds, the sounds of a life I had built from nothing. Marcus wanted to take that away from me again. He wanted to insert himself into my children's lives. To become a presence they would have to acknowledge and accommodate and perhaps even love. The thought made me sick. But I was not the same woman Marcus had married. Not the same woman he had manipulated and isolated and nearly destroyed. I was harder now, smarter, more prepared, and I had something I did not have 7 years ago. I had people who loved me, people who would fight beside me, an army of allies built through years of kindness and connection and refusing to give up. Marcus thought he could still manipulate the system. He thought his intelligence and his connections and his willingness to make deals would always save him. He was wrong, because I was not afraid anymore. That evening, I gathered everyone around the dinner table. Nathan, my mother, Dolly, even Margaret, who had driven up from the city. I told them about Marcus's motion, about the possibility that he might try to re-enter our lives, about the fight that was coming. No one panicked, no one despaired. They just looked at each other and then at me, and I saw the same determination in their eyes that I felt in my chest. What do you need from us? Nathan asked. I need you to keep doing exactly what you are doing, I said. Loving my children, supporting this family, reminding me why the fight matters. He squeezed my hand. Done. I need research help, I told Evelyn. Legal precedents, case histories, everything you can find on terminated parental rights and appeal processes. Already making lists in my head, my mother replied. I need pie, I told Dolly. She laughed. Honey, when have I ever let you down on that front? Margaret and I have work to do, I said to my attorney. We have 3 years. That is enough time to build an unassailable defense. Margaret nodded. We will make his motion look like the desperate attempt of a convicted criminal, because that is exactly what it is. I looked around the table at these people who had become my family. Some by blood, some by choice, all by love. We can do this, I said. We have done harder things, and we had, all of us. We had walked through fire and come out the other side. Marcus Cole had tried to destroy me once. He had failed. Now he wanted to try again, and he was going to fail again, because I was Grace Mitchell Mercer, mother, lawyer, survivor, fighter, and I did not lose anymore. 3 years later, the motion was denied. The hearing took less than an hour. Marcus appeared by a video from prison, older and grayer, diminished in ways that had nothing to do with physical changes. His argument was thin, his evidence non-existent, his desperation obvious. Margaret dismantled his case with surgical precision. Point by point, she demonstrated that the original termination had been proper, that Marcus had shown no genuine interest in parenting, that the children's welfare would be harmed rather than helped by his presence in their lives. The judge ruled from the bench. Motion denied. Case closed. Marcus would never be part of my children's lives. He would never poison them with his presence. He would never have the chance to manipulate them the way he had manipulated me. It was over. Truly, finally over. I walked out of that courthouse into bright sunshine, surrounded by everyone I loved. Nathan held my hand. My mother walked beside us. Dolly waited in the car, ready to celebrate with pie. My children were at home, watched by trusted friends, unaware of the battle that had just been won on their behalf. They would never know. They would grow up believing they had only one parent, which was sad but also a mercy. Some truths are too heavy for children to carry. I am 52 now as I finish telling you this story. My children are grown. Hope became a doctor, specializing in neonatal care. Daniel became a teacher, Harrison became a social worker, all of them dedicating their lives to helping others, each in their own way. Nathan and I have been married for 15 years. He still cannot cook anything more complicated than scrambled eggs, and I still tease him about it. My mother passed away 5 years ago, peacefully, in her sleep, surrounded by the grandchildren that she adored. I miss her every day. Dolly lived until 93. She was making pie the week she died. We buried her favorite rolling pin with her. Marcus died in prison 6 years ago. Natural causes, according to the report. I felt nothing when I heard the news. He had become irrelevant to my life long before his heart stopped beating. The foundation I started has helped over 50,000 women escape abusive situations. It has grown into something larger than I ever imagined, with offices across the country and partnerships around the world. I stepped back from active leadership 5 years ago, passing the torch to younger people with fresh energy and new ideas. But I still consult, still mentor, still show up when someone needs to hear that survival is possible. Because that is what I learned through all of it, often through the betrayal and the loss and the long, slow process of rebuilding. Survival is always possible, even when you cannot see how, even when every option seems closed, even when the darkness is so complete you cannot imagine light ever returning. You survive one breath at a time, 1 hour at a time, one day at a time, until something changes, and something always changes. I am sitting on my porch as I finish this story. The same porch where I sat 20 years ago, realizing for the first time that I was happy. The house has changed over the years. Additions and renovations and repairs. But the view is the same, fields stretching toward the horizon. Sky so big, it makes your problems feel small. My grandchildren are playing in the yard, Hope's daughter, Daniel's twin sons, Harrison's little girl, a new generation growing up without any knowledge of the darkness that preceded their existence. They know me as Grandma Grace, the woman who tells stories and makes cookies and always has time for one more game. They do not know that their grandmother once lay bleeding on a hospital floor while her husband signed divorce papers. They do not know about the psychiatric ward or the custody battles or the years of legal warfare. They do not know that the fortune funding their trust accounts came from a great-great-grandfather who disowned his own daughter for falling in love with the wrong man. They just know that they are loved, that they are safe, that their family will always be there for them. And that is enough. That is more than enough. If you are listening to this story, you are probably facing something difficult. Maybe not as dramatic as what I survived, but real and painful and overwhelming. I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me in those early impossible days. Your worth is not defined by who walks away from you. Your strength is not measured by whether you cry or scream or fall apart. Your future is not determined by the worst thing that has ever happened to you. You are valuable because you exist. You are strong because you have survived every difficult day of your life so far. You are capable of more than you can possibly imagine. The people who try to break you, who try to control you, who try to convince you that you are nothing without them, they are not powerful. They are terrified. Terrified of what you might become if you ever realize your own strength. Do not let their fear define you. Rise, fight, survive. And when you have survived, turn around and help someone else. Pass the kindness forward. Extend your hand into the darkness. That is how we win. Not through revenge or bitterness or becoming as hard as the people who hurt us, but through love, through connection, through refusing to let the worst of humanity have the last word. I am Grace Mitchell Mercer, mother, grandmother, lawyer, advocate, survivor, and this has been my story. Thank you for listening.